Yes, it's preseason, but it doesn't matter because we are here for you as always, except for last night when the game's not televised, right here on the PHLY Sixers pregame show presented by our good friends from Coors Light alongside Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck.
I'm going to need a Coors Light to get through this game.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you that right
I'm
now.
Devon Givens. Brianna is here. All of you getting ready for this big-time contest. Atlantic Division opponent, the rematch of the playoffs from 2 seasons ago. Hey,
and many other seasons.
Welcome to the PHLY Sixers pregame show. And we have a lot to talk about. We just got the starters. We'll get to them.
I was just going to say, you just mentioned this a rematch of 2 years ago. Not a single person in the Sixers starting lineup was on the roster 2 years ago.
For tonight's game.
Yep.
Yes. No, they are not. They're getting a rest tonight.
Not a single one.
We got a rest last night when they all played, so they decided to give us a different starting lineup. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But last night they did, on the first night of the back-to-back, take on the Minnesota Timberwolves in Iowa, homecoming for head coach Nick Nurse. And while the starters were in there, they were getting rocked pretty good. It was a double-digit lead at halftime for Minnesota. Sixers having their troubles, but the big thing that we wanted to take out of it, as we discussed on our Friday show before the game actually happened, we did absolutely get what we wanted from Paul George and seeing
we didn't
what
get what
that
we wanted
looked
from
like.
the broadcast partner.
No, not that part.
Unfortunately,
not that part. But we got.
I will say though, when they added the radio guys in, it got better. It did get better.
Wow. No comment.
Well, they did play last night. And look, a team high 23 points for Paul George last night. Tyrese Maxey also looked pretty good, 21, as he started to heat up a little bit more in that second half. I believe it was really the third quarter. But last night, Paul George, Kyle, we wanted to see it. We saw from the highlights. We saw a lot of good things from putting the ball on the floor, the outside shooting, people going crazy, saying, this is what you want. This is why you signed this type of player for Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I mean, I think it set in for a lot of people last night. Hey, Paul George is on the roster and not Tobias Harris. And just, I don't even like to bring Tobias back in, right?
Well, in part because Winona's going to yell at you in about 2 seconds.
But I just think you can see the difference between a guy who is masquerading as a wing and a guy who is not just a wing player with wing skills, but is a star-level talent, even in his mid-30s. What did Stack say?
He puts up 15 points, but he's never impacted a game? Something like that?
Yeah, so I think the fact that he got up 8 threes in his first half as a Sixer was just like, it's that meme of the sickos at the window, like, yes, like finally seeing that third guy, although last night he was more like the first or second option at times. To see that guy who's going to play alongside Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey getting up shots, taking step back threes, like taking purposeful threes, that was just incredible all on its own. And then you look at the fact that he can create. They asked him to bring the ball up a decent amount. So that's something that Nick Nurse talked about previously that he lived up to in game 1 of the PG era. And now we're going to be subjected to a lot of young guys, but it was obviously a nice debut for Paul. The first half was rough for the team overall, but he certainly made an impact on night 1.
Yeah, and it really just like it's one thing to be a shooter, but in order to get up 8 threes per game like he has the last few years, you have to have really good diversity in your shot too. You have to be able to get to that shot in many different ways. And you saw last night, you saw him pull up in transition. He came off pick and roll with Drummond. There were a couple step backs in there. He mixed in an and one at the rim. It was a real refreshing because the Sixers have not had very many dynamic shooters, especially with the ball in their hands. Like JJ was dynamic, but it was always off ball coming off of screens. Outside of Tyrese Maxey, Paul George is a relatively new phenomenon. And to have 2 of them on the floor, I mean, you mentioned, they got hit pretty hard in the first half. It was not a competitive game. They did start coming back in the third quarter when starters were still in, and a lot of that was because Tyrese Maxey and Paul George got really, really hot from the perimeter. And having 2 guys like that who can go out there and get hot, to sit here and think, now look, they're not going to win the math battle, so to speak. And I use that a little bit in quotations because Joel Embiid's free throw is a math battle. But they're not going to win the 3-point battle all that often because Joel Embiid is still going to be taking a lot of the offense through that mid-post, and he's going to be trying to do a lot of his damage inside the arc. But they have a chance to be way more competitive this year than they have been in a long, long time. And like I said, just having two dynamic guys who can get hot from the perimeter like that, it was real fun. It was real fun.
For what we saw, it was really cool. I mean, the one that a lot of people
For what we were allowed to see.
got to point it out, right? For the one that a lot of people were talking about, because they were highlighting the fact that he had 18 at the half, and it was a 3-pointer that he had, semi-transition. It was like a secondary break, if you will, come down on the right side of the floor, and it was a nice step back 3-pointer that he made from the right wing, knocking that one down, playing off of a screen from Andre Drummond, where he kind of snakes the dribble, like we talk about, and finds his way back just a little bit inside the 3-point line for a mid-range jumper. But you don't mind it coming from a player like that, as Derek said, not masquerading as, a certain type of player. So to see the things that we discussed yesterday of what we were looking for, the keys that we wanted to see out of Paul George pregame, our 3 o'clock show, that we all got on it, and people went on to say, "Oh, Devon's hype." That's why, because even in that little bit of time that he had out there on the floor in 26 minutes and 17 seconds, you saw the grab bag of things that he can do.
Which, by the way, decent amount of playing time in game one. Coming out of, he didn't play the first preseason game.
Right.
We're wondering kind of what it looks like for him, and he went out there, played over 25 minutes.
And he played, he didn't play all 12 of the first quarter. He played 11:27 of that first quarter. So maybe something for us to put that away, lock that up for when Joel Embiid does not play, what those minutes might look like. Tyrese Maxey did play the full 12. But seeing the grab bag of things that he was able to do from the highlights that we saw, just the activity, moving off the ball, the screens again, seeing Tyrese Maxey looking for him, setting him up. Whatever the play was that the offensive coaches and Nick Nurse decided to call and dial up, went right to Paul George, and you saw some of those things, the non-hesitation from those 3-pointers, not even thinking about it, and just going with the shot that was given to him. And those are the things that we talked about during our 3 o'clock show, and those are the things that we saw in the highlights once it happened. And while we were all having trouble, we all were having trouble watching it. Of course, we do know where we could.
The technical difficulties banner on League Pass was very funny.
There was one non-technical difficulty from my old place, and I made sure that I listened in that spot to get a good sound of what it actually sounded like coming from the play-by-play of it all. But to get the 9 threes up overall, to get 15 shots up in 26 minutes and still do it within the flow of the offense, it was good to read it and hear it and then see some of it as they posted it on their socials, the Sixers did. So all in all, a good debut off tonight. He's not playing tonight, neither is Tyrese Maxey, but it was good to see that as the debut for Paul George.
100%. And, what I liked was seeing some of those actions that we were talking about yesterday, like the using Maxey as a screener or a ghost screener. You saw one of those that you're trying to see, all right, is the defense going to stay attached to Tyrese? In that case, Paul George has an ISO against a decent matchup, was able to go and score. If they try to trap it all, well, then you're leaving Tyrese Maxey open for above the break 3 or a wing 3. And that's a situation where you're going to take Tyrese to make that shot more times than not. So already saw some promising stuff in terms of the tactics and what's going to go into getting the best out of that combination. And I don't think it has slowed anybody's excitement for the season whatsoever. So that's all you can really hope for, right? Is like you just don't want it to be a downer in the preseason. We haven't really gotten any of those yet. Saved it all for tonight, fellas. The most exciting preseason game of all time.
I was going to say, the only thing really slowing the excitement for the season is the fact that they're playing preseason games that are barely televised, don't have any commentators going when it is going on. And it's like, it's very frustrating that we're sitting here super excited about the season, and it's like first game breakers, second game barely televised, third game nobody's playing. It's like, just give me the real thing. I want real basketball fully.
Plus a back-to-back. Yeah. Which is why the guys are not playing tonight. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
It's just wild. So that's what we got from the Paul George experience, from what we were able to get. And it was just really, again, good to see. Even just looking at the box score as I look at it right now, and I saw the guys checking it out. His name is in the column. We've all seen him in the uniform. We know he's there. But to actually see him put up some shots and put up some buckets, PG-8 there last night, and getting the work done. When we were at training camp, and you just know we see some of the shots post-practice. We see the drills that he's doing. And it may be speaking to a few people here from time to time and what they thought of him. And they're like, yeah, 34 doesn't matter. The guy is still good. he can shoot the basketball. And then he goes up and does what he does.
And that's really what you saw last night. Like, none of his moves really required a high level. Like, maybe the and one, but even that, it's not like he exploded through anything on the and one. It's just stuff that's smooth.
Yep.
He uses his size, he uses his incredible shooting, and he gets to his spots. And that's the kind of stuff, like, again, he might not be the same impact player he was at 27, but I don't think the cliff is going to hit him quite as hard as it is different archetypes. Like, I don't think he's going to have a Dame Lillard-esque all of a sudden, like, whoa, he got old in an offseason.
He's not going to shrink 6 inches.
Yeah.
He's still going to be a tall guy who can shoot, which there is always value in that.
Yes, it is. And there's some value for these other players in the preseason to see how many minutes they can get. Can they show something within those minutes for the coaching staff to see if they can crack a rotation for the regular season? And one of those players we know is Jared McCain. Last night, he had 9 points in 15 minutes and 20 seconds, knocked down 2 of his 3 3-point attempts, had 2 rebounds, and let me see, no assists last night. But again, not a lot of minutes last night, 15, 20, because you want to see a little bit more of Maxey with George and Oubre and Martin and Andre Drummond, and we'll talk about some of those guys as we go along. But yes, he's starting tonight. He's going to get a lot of those minutes tonight. So let's show what the starters are for tonight's matchup, courtesy of the Sixers.
This is a picture you
Twitter
will never see again.
You might see it in Game 82.
Well,
Game
or in another preseason game.
Right, that's true. Seeding is locked in, Game 82 or preseason game.
Tonight's starters.
This is the starting lineup you might get.
Jared McCain, Jeff Doughton, KJ Martin, Ricky Council IV, and Gershon Yabusele.
Yes.
That is a first and presumably a last time those guys will all start together. That is not in Delaware, and Yabu's not going to Delaware, so it won't happen there. Neither is KJ. It's there's a reason that the graphic for the show was empty the bench, because this is, and look, I don't mean that pejoratively, right? For these guys, this is a massive opportunity. And I think specifically for Jared and Ricky, who they're guys who are on the fringe of the rotation right now. I would say probably slightly outside of it as it stands right now. And in Ricky's case, you're in year 2. You're hoping that you can carve out more of a consistent role this year. You need to be one of the main guys tonight. You need to show defensive discipline. You got to knock down some outside shots, do some of the regular work we see from him as a slasher. And for McCain, you continue to build on the shooting success, but also start to show all the rest of your game, right? And once again, he's next to another ball handler who's going to take pressure off him in the backcourt in Doughton. So he's not getting that like solo lead guy, point guard type opportunity. But I still think that Nick will hand him opportunities in the backcourt to run the team, so to speak. And then the other one, we really need to find out, and we're getting a lot of opportunities here, can Yabusele play, consistent-ish minutes at the 5? Because one thing, and we don't have to relitigate last night a lot.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed in last night's game, Andre Drummond having to cover Naz Reid and step out on him at the 3-point line ended up being a trouble spot. And there will be matchups at times this year, and certainly in the playoffs, where against stretch bigs, you might be better served playing Yabusele, but that relies on him being able to do the defensive stuff, to clear the glass and do all the team rebounding stuff we talked about previously. So still some not major storylines in this game, but stuff that is worth tracking, and it's going to decide some rotational battles heading into the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for the Sixers in the midst of a title contention season to give us a process lineup. It's a real throwback to the past. And this is a lineup where in prior years or prior, periods of this franchise's history, we'd be like, all right, I'm looking forward to the chance to really evaluate Jared McCain and give him big minutes, see what he can do, see the kind of growth Ricky has had over the last year. And there's still part of it. I feel like you got to wind me up and get me back into that mindset a little bit, but I feel like you can find something fun to take from this game, even if it's not necessarily what I think we're all geared up to watch. But yeah, I wouldn't mind it if the starters were playing. But let me ask you this. Clearly, because Nick Nurse said before that he was going to look to do basically like a split squad in this back-to-back. Mm-hmm. Would you have preferred for him to put like a couple starters in each night or go all in on one night?
No, I mean, I like the way that they did it just because it allowed us to see Tyrese and Paul and how, because anything else that you're learning is not that important. I think if you can fast track the synergy that your stars have, and they can't with Joel right now because he's just not playing, and we're not really expecting him to play until end of the preseason, more than likely. You got to get Tyrese and Paul out there at the very least, start to develop some kind of feel and synergy, because the rest of the guys are all playing off of them, right? All their cuts, all their relocations around the perimeter. If you're, someone like Andre, someone like Yabu, and you're operating out of the dunker, timing those just like quick duck-ins with Paul, and how does a pick and roll look with Paul running the show, and just all sorts of little details that are hard to figure out without just doing them against hostile competition. So I'm glad that Paul played with Tyrese last night, even if it means this game is a little less exciting than it would be if they split them up.
I think from a preparation standpoint, I agree with you. The fan or the person who has to watch a game wouldn't mind it if Tyrese was playing here tonight, but I think it's more important to prepare for the season and cater to people like you and I. So yeah, I think that's probably right.
So for me, selfishly, for TV purposes, I wish he would have split them up, split squatted, so we can watch some of those guys tonight.
It's always about us.
Yeah,
we always say it.
I don't care which starters, but let me see some starters. And so selfishly, for that reason, yes, I would have liked to. But no, I agree with Kyle, and I agree with you that this was the right way to go about it. Even though the Celtics, as we're talking starters, they are going to start their starters tonight. Luke Cornett is the 5 with Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum. So we do get a chance to see these young players and how they compete against these types. So we get to see.
Good luck, Rick.
I was going to say, you can compete all you want. You might not have much of a chance.
We get to see Jared McCain against 2 all NBA level defenders at the guard position. It may not go great, but we get a chance to see it. But so for me, it's just about the competition tonight and how they do go out there and compete. Do they back down? Do they show that they have that fight to have that will and that fight to try to compete against these all NBA, all these all-stars that are opposite them? We're not going to expect them to win the game. They're probably not even going to win the quarter. They might get blown out, but you know what? They might surprise us and actually keep it a little bit closer than we expected. And these are the types of games that the coaches like, when we see where the backup quarterback has to come in and the head coach likes to run certain things because the backup is in there, and you don't know. You really have to coach. When we would talk about Rivers in the past, when certain guys was out, he really. I'm going to show you how I can coach.
That's the one time where we're like, hey, Doc's cooking something.
Yeah, exactly. And Nick Nurse might, not that he might go out there and coach. We know he's going to go out there and coach tonight. How are these guys going to respond and execute certain things that they draw up for them to play for the Sixers tonight, and what everything looks like with the head coach and the coaching staff calling the plays and doing all the things that they're going to be doing tonight. So that part I am curious, because Joe Mazzulla said, all right, you guys are playing? Cool. Now let's see how they go out. It gives us something to talk about after this game is over, for sure. So that part I am looking forward to see how they compete, how they execute, how they run their stuff.
And it was a little bit in question because Boston has a back-to-back too. They're on the front end of a back-to-back, but they have a game tomorrow. So
but maybe, same as last night for the Sixers.
Maybe Mazzulla would be like, all right, well, if they're not going to play our starters, we'll play our starters against the other team to try to get an evaluation. But you don't really need to evaluate when you want as many games as they did in the NBA championship. So still, no, but I mean, I think in this one, you're not looking at the score. You're not even looking at winning a quarter. You're looking at like individual games within the games. How does Ricky hold up defensively? Is Jared able to get his shot off against an incredible defense? Little things like that I think is probably where you're going more.
And I would say this, if you're Nick Nurse, part of what you want to see, like if you're looking at Ricky, Jared, some of these guys that we're highlighting, you want them to step up, but you don't want them to play out of character, right? Like as a coach, they're looking at it as, I need you to do more, but I don't want you to play outside yourself. I want you to still understand what your role is, what you're supposed to do. And hey, ball comes here, I see a guy in the corner, we're still making that extra pass. You're not trying to be a hero and score 25 points on 23 shots. You're just going to get the ball more. You have more opportunities to attack, more responsibility on both ends of the floor. And for young guys, that's often the hardest thing to try to balance, right? Like you see guys come in at the end of games for garbage time, And that is like hey, it's a showcase, and it's just like some guys come in, and God bless Turk last year, loved watching him in those spots. But you knew 3 out of every 4 possessions, he's just jacking up shots. So you don't want to see that here, right? You want to see real structure. You want to see them kind of stick to whatever their instruction is going into this game and trying to showcase themselves without it turning into like hero ball and nonsense. So that I would imagine is the message they're getting from Nick and Rico and Bobby and the rest of these guys on the staff.
Let's move on to the keys for this one tonight. You mentioned some things, Kyle. Derek, I'll ask you. Of course, we know who the starters are on both sides. So some of the keys, even beginning with the Yabusele piece going against Luke Cornett, but he is playing the 5 where presumably he's still trying to lock in that, we think, that third starting spot, and Noah Dembona in the starting lineup. So what are some of the keys here tonight for you with this starting 5 going against the champs?
Yeah. Well, I would say because they're very small in the front court. And, Yabusele isn't a traditional rim protector anyway. So communication, I think, is probably going to be number one. You've got 3 pretty big guys around Yabusele, with Doughton and then the 2, not Jared, obviously he's the one who's not, Ricky and KJ. Are you able to switch? Are you able to communicate? Are you able to limit the amount of dribble penetration that Yabu has to try to, overcome, because he's not going to be able to alter those shots? I think that's maybe the number one thing I'm looking at, in part because communication is just a pretty good indicator of where players are and how ready they are for the season to start. And then also just like I said, can Jared find a way to get his shot off against what's a really, really, really difficult matchup? If you remember back a couple of years ago when Maxey was first starting to break through, the Celtics really caused him a lot of problems.
They were the boogie team for forever.
Really up until last year. So I think this is a real tough matchup for him, and I'm real curious to see how he responds to it.
To that point about the defense, I would not be shocked if they play a gratuitous amount of zone tonight, in which case I will, yell about how much zone is for cowards and whatnot. On the Yabusele front, I want to see, because when he played last night, a lot of what I saw was when guys got beat, he wasn't necessarily focused on being a rim protector as he was, I'm going to try to put myself in position for a potential rebound. And that in itself shows some of the limitations of playing him at the 5. So I want to see how they manage that tonight when presumably just between Tatum and Brown, they're going to be able to put a ton of pressure on the rim, especially against the downgrade in wing defending talent that will be out there tonight. All due respect to, Ricky and KJ and all those guys. It's a tall task that they have to deal with. So I want to see some more from Yabu in terms of the interior defense type stuff. I think he's held up okay as a switch defender and a one-on-one guy, and has rebounded okay so far. But how does he work in this defensive scheme where he's the last line of defense? And I want to see Jared create some separation at times. I thought he had a good moment last night where he was matched up against, I believe it was Rob Dillingham on a play in the second half where he kind of just went through him. And I think that's what he's able to do right now when he has a strength advantage on what you would say is a small-ish guard, certainly when a guy's who's smaller than him and Dillingham. But can you use some speed to get by somebody? Is it a hesitation move? Is it a cross it? Whatever it is, he's got to be able to create space for himself inside the arc, because we've all seen the relocation instincts, the transition shooting, all that has already shown up. I want to see him try to create separation in the half court, because that's the difference between being, okay, you might be the rotation guy some nights based on what we need, and you have to play, right? If he's able to do that, you have to get him on the floor. So that's something I would like to see tonight. I think that's a big key to whether they succeed or fail. Really, it's not even succeed or fail. It's lose by an acceptable amount and lose by a gratuitous amount.
I'll go with the just game plan kind of stuff of keeping their turnovers down to give themselves a chance tonight. They may not make the shot a lot of times because, again, look who they're playing with. We're just strictly talking about the starters against the group with the Boston Celtics, so the competition level. But I want to see them keep the turnovers down and run the things that are called and execute them. Not a lot, like Kyle said, of that one-on-one all-star game type of play or end-of-game blowout type of play where you're really trying to show your worth. No, run your stuff, because there's still minutes maybe up for for grabs where it may not be a minutes that you're in front of Kyle Lowry or Eric Gordon or even Reggie Jackson for that matter, but a spot where they are playing the Pistons in the fourth game and it's a close game. And Nick Nurse says, okay, KJ Martin, this is a spot for you, where I remember going back for obviously the practices and maybe even the 3 games before, but what you've done in the preseason to run the stuff that you run, play within yourself, and execute the things that are called. So that's what I'm looking for tonight, keeping those turnovers down, giving yourselves an opportunity against an elite defensive squad opposite you tonight. They may not even go full tilt against you tonight, or maybe they will, where they might try to lock you the hell up in a preseason game because they want to sit down pretty early in this game, because they do, as Derek said, play tomorrow night in the event that they do get some minutes. So I want to see that. And then I'll go to the other, because of our show, I want to see Ricky play under control tonight. Do what Ricky does, but play under control where he does keep his turnovers down.
Yes.
Where he's not getting too ahead of himself saying, I'm playing against Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, so let me show.
Measuring stick.
That's going to get you on the bench.
Yes.
So play better. Play under control. Keep those turnovers down and knock down those shots when the ball swings to you for those open three-point makes, and run the floor and defend as best as you can. Try to stay out of foul trouble and just show that, because it's fun to see if they can add that extra wing that is going to come off the bench and provide them 5 minutes and maybe be on the floor with 2 of those other 3 from time to time. I would like to see that with him, with that collection of wing talent that they do have with that starting group. So I'll stick with the Ricky part and go with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Ricky might be playing with a little bit of main character syndrome today.
He can't.
And we love him for that.
But he can't.
It's one of those where it's a fine line to walk, for sure.
That's where you listen to your assistant coaches, where your head coach is going to yell at you and your assistant coach is telling you, hey, play your game, but stay under control, because this is important for your overall development and what it could mean minutes-wise for you later on. So anybody else deep in the rotation tonight that you might want to see? Because
there is no deep in the rotation, honestly. It's just
the first name that came to mind was Lester Quinones, but I don't think he might be the 6th man. He's not deep in the rotation tonight.
That's the thing, right? It's like every guy who's available will play. And I mean, it'll be good for someone like a Judah Mintz, who he, at the end of Summer League, had some nice moments and was able to get an opportunity here in the preseason. It's, you're happy for guys like that they're just trying to find their way. And this is a big showcase, not just for within the Sixers organization, but for the whole league, right? You put some things on tape in the preseason against the team who's the overwhelming favorite to be the title winner.
And by the way,
year.
if you're bumped up and against a team like this who's playing their guys, you're playing against Peyton Pritchard.
Right. You're not playing against their version of you on the roster. So it's going to be a fun one for guys like that. But yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm mostly watching for Jared, Ricky, and Yabu, and everything else. We'll kind of see what happens.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Well, good stuff last night from the team picking up their play in the second half to make it a game, and of course giving us the numbers that Paul George did and Tyrese Maxey with his 21. 16 for Kelly Oubre, so main character syndrome for Kelly Oubre.
Shot the ball well.
6 for 9, 3 for 5.
I was fine with that.
He played his role. He looked pretty good. A double-double from Andre Drummond with 10 points and 15 rebounds in his 24 minutes of play. Exactly what you expect from him in a starting role overall. 9 for Jared McCain, as we mentioned, off the bench. Also looking forward to see Adem Bona in that backup spot at the 5
He
tonight.
may use all those 6 fouls tonight.
Man. This is where you get the 8 fouls in the preseason, right? Like the Summer League.
The 10 Summer League.
Right? Yeah. Give them those. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in for a preseason game. Second night of a back-to-back on a Saturday night. We always appreciate it. We love that you hang out with us for these types of games as well. Our pregame show is presented by our good friends from Coors Light, and we'll be back for the postgame a little bit later on to find out how these starters did against the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Luke Cornett lineup for the Boston Celtics. A little unfair.
Our prediction,
pain. So
my prediction is we will be back here at the end of the game. That's my prediction.
Kyle,
see y'all for postgame.
Bree, I'm Devon. We'll talk to you postgame right here on the PHLY Sixers postgame show.
We all silly like the mayor.